The nights in our ER settle like fog, quiet, damp, and heavy, with breath held between heartbeats. You can hear the fluorescent bulbs hum when it's really late, when no machines beep, and even the drunks have passed out. It's in those hours, when the air thins out and every sound feels 3 steps too close, that I remember her the most. My name is Clara, I'm 38. I've been an ER nurse for 11 years, and I have never told this story without shivering halfway through. That's not because it's frightening in the way people expect. It's frightening because it never really ended. I was still relatively new when I got my first overnight solo shift. The veteran nurses said the 2 a.m. lull was sacred. If it's quiet, don't jinx it. But I've always liked quiet. It gives me space to think, to breathe. I'd walk the trauma bays and straighten sheets, check supplies, refill gloves. I liked curtain 3 because nobody else did. They said the lights flickered too much, the wall monitor was a little slow, and the air always felt colder there, but I liked the isolation. It felt less expectant. I was folding a blanket when I saw the little girl. She was sitting upright on the gurney, her legs swinging just above the floor, brown hair, red dress, quiet, still, watching me. My first instinct was to smile, but something stopped me. I don't know what exactly. Maybe it was that she didn't blink, or the way the folds of her dress didn't move at all, even when she swung her feet. "Hi," I said gently. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Nothing. I turned to call for security, but when I turned back, nothing. The bay was empty, curtain drawn, lights flickering like always. I told myself it was fatigue, stress, nothing else, but something about that moment clung to me, like the air hadn't shifted back to normal, like the space where she'd been still remembered her. I didn't tell anyone. You don't, in this job. You lock it up and keep moving until the next time. And there was a next time, exactly 1 week later, same time, same bay. I was restocking the crash cart when I saw the curtain pulled halfway. It was supposed to be open. We hadn't had a patient in that bay all night, but there it was, halfway drawn, swaying slightly. I walked over, told myself it was a draft, pushed the curtain aside. Nothing. Except a red thread on the gurney. I picked it up before I even realized. It felt warm. That night, I didn't sleep when I got home. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, clutching the thread in my fingers until dawn. I threw it away the next morning, but I found another one, a week later. The third time was different. We actually had a patient in curtain 3, a man in his 70s, cardiac arrest, revived after 3 minutes down. He was awake, responsive, but pale and shaken. I was checking his IV when he grabbed my wrist, tight. "She was here," he whispered. "The girl, she was right there, said she liked the red dress." I froze. I didn't ask him anything. I just nodded like we always do, soothed him, adjusted the blankets, but my heart was galloping. After he was moved upstairs, I stood in that bay alone for 20 minutes, just listening, watching the curtain sway, wondering if I should speak aloud. I didn't, not yet. I started researching, quietly. I asked around, never directly. Old nurses, retired techs. A few knew the whispers. Some kid died there. One said, car crash, whole family. Only she made it here. Died in that bay. Parents were DOA. She was alone. Cried for her mom. No one had a name, just fragments. A red dress, brown hair, 8, maybe 9 years old. The story faded like all the others, absorbed into the sterile walls, brushed away by time and protocol. But I started seeing her more, not clearly, always at the edge. Reflections, corners of eyes, footsteps when no one was walking. Once the lights in curtain 3 blinked in a pattern. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short. I looked it up. Morse code, SOS. The worst moment, though, wasn't even mine. A new nurse, a transfer, had her first night alone. Around 2:30, I saw her rush into the break room, pale, sweating. "She asked for you," she gasped. "Who?" "The little girl in the red dress." I took her seriously. We sat for a long time. I didn't explain much, just enough to let her know she wasn't insane. She quit 2 weeks later. I've come to believe she's not angry, not malicious, just stuck, waiting, maybe for her parents, maybe for someone to say it's okay to leave. But I don't think she trusts us, not anymore. One night I sat in that bay and whispered, "I'm sorry," just that. I think she heard me. The lights didn't flicker that night, but the next shift, a child came in, real. This time, same age, brown hair, wore a red hoodie. She survived. I don't know if it's connected. Maybe that's me hoping. Or maybe something changed. But Curtain 3 hasn't been used since. Not officially. We say it's under maintenance. The equipment works fine, but nobody books it. Sometimes I still leave a blanket folded there, just in case. Bay 9 wasn't cursed. Not officially. No one ever said the word out loud. But we all felt it. If you've worked the ER long enough, you learn to listen to the subtle language of a place, the way certain doors creak differently, how the lights buzz louder in one hallway than another, or how some trauma bays seem to exhale cold air even when the vents are off. Bay 9 exhaled like that, like the room was breathing in reverse. I've worked night shifts at this ER for 6 years, long enough to have seen things that won't ever make it into a chart. And Bay 9, that's where it started for me, where the hospital shadow really pulled me in. It was a Thursday night, quiet, strangely so. The full moon was high, and I remember thinking it was a nice break from the usual chaos. We even joked about it at the nurse's station. Full moon but no psych cases. Maybe the werewolves took the night off. Stupid joke. We should have known better. Around 3:17 a.m., the trauma line lit up, code black. Now, most hospitals don't even use code black. Ours did, unofficially. It wasn't on the wall. It wasn't in the manuals. It was an old term, some of the lifers still whispered, meant a patient was coming in under unspeakable circumstances. No ID, no record, usually found in places they shouldn't be. Once it's a code black, protocol shifts, extra security, backup responders, psych on standby. It's our way of saying, brace yourself, something's wrong beyond the body. Dispatch said the patient was found in the basement of a condemned church, naked, burned wrists shackled, still alive. They rolled him into Bay 9. Even before they unstrapped him from the gurney, the air turned. That's the only way I can describe it. Turned. The temperature didn't just drop, it twisted, like gravity realigned in the room. One nurse dropped a tray. A monitor sparked and went dead. The patient was male, early 40s. Third-degree burns covered most of his body, but he didn't flinch. No signs of pain, no sedation needed. He just stared at the ceiling, mouth twitching like he was mouthing words none of us could hear. And the smell, burned hair, rotted meat, wet soil. I've smelled death before. This was worse. It smelled like old death, as if it had been bottled and poured over him, drop by drop. Dr. Lorne, our night physician, tried to get vitals, but every time we attached a monitor, it failed. The pulse ox glitched. The EKG printed gibberish. His chart had nothing but black ink smears where the numbers should be. Still, he breathed. He never blinked. And he wouldn't let go of the black cloth wrapped in his fist. That's when I noticed the symbols. They were etched into his skin, not tattoos, carved. Deep, fresh, still weeping blood. Symbols that didn't match anything I'd seen before. Concentric circles, crooked stars, jagged arrows pointing inward. One symbol just above his sternum kept catching the overhead light like it was pulsing. I asked to call psych. Dr. Lorne nodded, but never looked away from the man. Then, without warning, the man sat upright. There was no transition, no wince. 1 second he was prone, and the next he was sitting upright on the gurney, like a puppet yanked by strings. The gurney's wheels creaked under the sudden shift. He opened his mouth. Not to scream, not to speak, to sing. A low, droning hum spilled out of him. It wasn't a language, not one I knew, but it felt old, cold, and it vibrated the IV poles, made the lights buzz harder, made every piece of metal in the room rattle like bones in a drawer. Then the lights blew out. Pitch black. You've never known real darkness until you've been in a trauma bay with a patient humming in a dead language while machines short out around you. I reached for my pen light. It wouldn't turn on. Then I heard the scream, not from the man, from Jenna, one of our interns. She was behind the curtain, nearest to Bay 9's sink. When the lights came back, she was on the ground, bleeding from both ears, eyes wide, pupils blown. She just kept saying, "Don't look in the mirror, don't look in the mirror." But Bay 9 doesn't have a mirror, only a small metal medicine cabinet. When I turned toward it, I swear, for a fraction of a second, I saw someone else standing behind me. But I was alone. Security tried to move the patient. They couldn't, not physically. 3 grown men could not lift him from the gurney. He weighed maybe 160 pounds, but he wouldn't budge. His skin felt stuck, like whatever had brought him in was keeping him there. Then he stopped singing. He lay back down, eyes closed, and died, just like that. No code blue, no alarms, nothing. As if someone had flipped a switch from somewhere far away. The monitor came back on, flat line. Dr. Lorne checked him, quietly called TOD. We all exhaled, but it didn't feel like closure. It felt like he'd left something behind. The cloth he'd been holding, it unwrapped itself. That sounds impossible, but I swear on every license I've earned, it loosened on its own and unfurled slowly on the gurney beside him. Inside was a single object, a black, rusted key, still warm. Security bagged it. It disappeared by morning. So did the body. The paperwork. Lost. All of it. We searched for hours. The camera footage from Bay 9 that night. Static from 3:17 to 4:06. And Jenna, she never came back. Her family checked her into a private facility. Said she kept drawing symbols on the walls, in blood, and me. I stopped working near Bay 9, refused it for months. Eventually, they shut it down, called it equipment failure, renovated it into a storage closet. But sometimes late at night, when I walk past that hallway, I hear it. The hum, low and steady, not a song anymore. A call, and I still don't know if it's calling him back, or calling someone else in. I didn't believe in ghosts. Not the kind that linger anyway. Hospitals are strange places. Sure, people die here every day, and sometimes their stories feel unfinished. You get used to odd noises, the flicker of motion in your periphery, even strange dreams after night shifts. You blame it on exhaustion, or stress, or the flickering fluorescent lights. That's what I did, until the girl showed up behind Curtain 5. It started 6 months ago. Curtain 5 is part of the fast-track section of the ER. It's meant for quick cases, fevers, sprains, minor injuries. Nothing serious, nothing dangerous. But no one liked working that particular bay. It always felt a little too cold, no matter how high the thermostat was, and the curtain was just slightly longer than the others, dragging along the floor like it didn't want to let go of what was underneath. I was on triage rotation that night, one of those slow dragging shifts where your eyelids weigh more than your legs. Around 2:40 a.m., I saw the movement. A little girl. She peeked out from behind curtain 5, just for a second. Pale face, wide eyes, long dark hair, but wearing what looked like an old hospital gown. One of the older types, pale blue with faded floral patterns we hadn't used in years. I walked over, thinking maybe a patient's child had wandered in. But when I pulled the curtain back, there was no one there. The gurney was empty. No files on the chart clip, no sign-in on the board. I radioed the front desk. Any pediatric patients here? Nope, they answered. Only 3 patients in fast track, all adults. I didn't mention the girl. I just chalked it up to exhaustion. Probably a trick of the light, I told myself. But I avoided curtain 5 the rest of the night. A few nights later, I heard someone crying. I was walking past fast track again when I heard it, soft sobs. It wasn't coming from any of the monitored patients. It was unmistakably a child's cry. I followed the sound, expecting to find someone watching a video or comforting a sick kid. It led me to curtain 5. This time, the curtain was half closed. I stood still, listening. The sobbing grew louder. I pulled the curtain back slowly. Empty bed, monitors off, just a small hand-shaped smudge on the inside of the glass cabinet, like someone had pressed their palm there, greasy and faint. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The gurney in curtain 5. It had scratches on the frame, little ones, like fingernails. They were clustered near the top rail and lower foot, as if someone had gripped it tightly or clawed at it. I asked maintenance to check the room for issues. They found nothing, but after that night, more staff started whispering. They called her the girl in 5. No one wanted to say it officially, but I heard the stories during shift changes, usually when people thought no one was listening. A CNA saw her in the mirror when brushing her hair in the staff room, just standing there behind her reflected, not present. A float nurse felt a small hand grab her wrist under the gurney when she bent down to plug in an IV pole, but when she looked, nothing was there. A security guard swore he saw her on the cameras, walking barefoot past curtain 5 at 3:00 a.m. But when he played it back, the footage was gone, corrupted. One of the doctors joked that the girl had been a forgotten patient from decades ago. A John, or rather Jane, Doe that no one claimed. He laughed when he said it, but his hands shook when he drank his coffee. I didn't laugh. I started keeping notes, times I thought I saw her, little changes around the bay, curtain half pulled when it should have been closed, temperature readings dropping lower in just that one section, even though the HVAC was fine. Then came the night she spoke to me. It was during another slow shift, maybe a week after I started documenting everything. I'd just finished checking a discharged patient's IV when I heard a whisper right behind me. "Can you see me now?" I turned. No one was there, but the curtain was swaying slightly, even though the AC was off, and in the middle of the gurney was a drawing, crayons, 3 stick figures, one tall, one shorter, and one lying down, red X's for eyes. I bagged it, showed it to charge. They didn't want to hear about it. "Throw it away. You're freaking out the interns," they said. But I didn't throw it away. I kept it in my locker. I couldn't stop thinking about it. 3 people, 1 dead, and the girl, somehow in the middle of it all. That night I stayed late, long after my shift ended. I had to know. I pulled the hospital archives. It took hours, but I found it. A 5-year-old girl brought in after a car crash. Her parents died at the scene. She survived 2 days in the ER before passing from internal injuries. She was kept in curtain 5. Her name was Emily. The records ended there. No family claimed the body. The space had been used ever since. But no one remembered Emily. Until now. I don't know what I expected to happen. Closure maybe. Peace. But Emily didn't want peace. She wanted presence. And after I read her file, she became stronger. The next time I saw her, she wasn't a shadow or a whisper. She was there, sitting on the gurney, legs dangling, eyes staring right into mine. "You found me," she said. Her voice was wrong, too deep, too hollow, echoing like it came from a place below the floor. I couldn't move. She reached for me, and the lights in all of Fast Track flickered and blew. I blacked out. They found me on the floor, a faint bruise shaped like a small hand around my wrist. I didn't tell them what I saw. Who would believe me? But I did tell them to stop using curtain 5. I told them we needed to wall it off. They laughed, but 2 weeks later, a new nurse passed out there, said she heard a little girl say, "Why did you leave me?" That was enough. Curtain 5 was shut permanently. It's an equipment closet now, but sometimes when I walk past it, I still hear sobbing, and every once in a while, the curtain moves, even when there's no curtain there anymore. There are places in hospitals that feel wrong, even when they're brightly lit, even when they're clean, even when nothing is technically wrong. Something inside your chest just tells you, don't stay here. For me, that place was Trauma Room 3. It wasn't always bad. When I first started working night shifts in the ICU, Room 3 was just another space. Same tile, same walls, same bed. We rotated patients in and out, cleaned it twice a day, monitored the vitals like always. But over time it changed. It started with the codes. More patients died in Room 3 than any other room on our floor. That might not sound unusual. This is the ICU. But I'm telling you, the numbers didn't make sense. I kept a tally 1 month. 9 patients, 7 coded in that room. 4 didn't make it. I tried not to overthink it. Coincidences happen. Patterns are just our brains trying to make sense of chaos, right? Then came the oxygen failures. It was always Room 3. The O2 would suddenly drop, machines would beep, alarms would blare, and we'd rush in thinking a tube had disconnected or the wall line was faulty. But everything would be connected. The regulators working, the tanks full. Still patients gasped, like they were drowning. We replaced the outlets, had maintenance check the lines 3 separate times. Each time, no issues found, but it kept happening. The worst was Mr. Denner, elderly man, post-surgical recovery from a bowel resection. No reason he should have declined the way he did. We moved him into Room 3. At 11:10 p.m., I remember the time clearly, because I had just clocked in, and his family had just left. At 11:34 p.m., his oxygen saturation dropped from 97% to 82% in less than a minute. I rushed in, checked every line, every setting. Everything was right. Nothing was dislodged, but his lips were turning blue, and his eyes, God, the panic in them, like he could see something I couldn't. I gave him a non-rebreather mask. No change. The respiratory therapist came running. She adjusted the pressure, swapped out equipment, still dropping, 78%, 71%. Then he whispered something. I leaned in close, not even sure he was conscious. He said, "It's breathing my air. I swear to you, it's breathing my air." Then his heart stopped. We coded him for 20 minutes. Nothing worked. After that, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I asked around, quietly, off the record. A senior nurse who'd been there for 20 years looked me straight in the eye and said, "Room 3's always been like that. Since before I started. Since before anyone here started. What does that mean? It means we don't talk about it, just get them out quick. But I couldn't let it go. I started digging. No one at admin wanted to hear about it. They brushed it off. Anecdotal, statistical variance, the usual bureaucratic nonsense. So I found an old janitor named Alonzo who'd retired 5 years ago. Met him at a diner near the hospital. When I mentioned room 3, he turned pale. "You don't know?" he asked. "Know what?" He leaned in and whispered. "They built that room over the old morgue." My stomach dropped. Back before the hospital expanded, the ICU didn't exist. That whole wing used to be pathology, and the body freezer, room 3 in particular, had been the autopsy theater. They converted the space during a hasty renovation in the 90s. Never blessed, never cleansed, just plastered over and called it sterile. Alonzo said he used to mop in there late at night. Sometimes he'd hear dragging sounds, like something heavy being pulled across tile. Once he found bloody footprints that weren't there an hour earlier. But no one believed him. No one ever does. I decided I'd try something. A test. I stayed late after my shift one night, and went into room 3, alone. I closed the door, sat on the chair, brought a pulse oximeter and clipped it on my own finger, just to see. At first everything was fine. Room temperature, quiet. O2 sat steady at 98%. Then I heard the sound, a slow, rasping inhale, followed by a wet exhale. There was no one else there, but the air got thick, like trying to breathe underwater. My pulse ox dropped to 91%. My chest tightened. I gasped, but it felt like nothing was entering my lungs. I tried to stand, but my legs were numb. Then I saw it. In the glass reflection of the supply cabinet, something was standing behind me. Not a person exactly, more like the absence of one. A shape that bent the light, like a human-sized smudge in reality. No features, just a form, breathing, loud and slow. I bolted. By the time I staggered out, my O2 sat was at 84%. The nurse at the desk said I looked grey. I never went back in there alone again. We started transferring patients out of room 3 as quickly as possible. Short stays only, never overnight. A few nurses started hanging crosses in their pockets when passing by. One even taped a photo of Saint Michael above the monitor. But the room got hungry. It didn't like being ignored. Last month we admitted a trauma patient. Gunshot wound. Young man. Stable vitals. No major organ damage. Just needed overnight monitoring. Only room available. Trauma room 3. We kept saying we'd move him once someone discharged. But the floor was packed. At 3:03 a.m., his oxygen plummeted. Same story. Everything connected. Lungs clear. But he looked terrified. Gasping. Eyes bulging. He started tearing at his gown. His wires. Clawing at his own throat. And then just before he lost consciousness, he whispered, "It's sitting on my chest." We lost him within 5 minutes. Nothing we did mattered. He died perfectly healthy. I filed another incident report. No one followed up, so we, the night staff, we made our own rule. No more patients in room 3. We store linens there now, sometimes extra equipment, but we never stay long, because when you're inside that room, no matter how much air there is, your body knows something is stealing it, and it's waiting for the next breath to take. Some things defy science. That's hard to admit when you work in a hospital, especially in the ICU, where facts and data are your only lifelines. But after what I saw with bed 6, I don't think I believe in just science anymore. It was a quiet Tuesday night when I met Miss Halverson, 86 years old, admitted with a massive stroke. No family listed, no visitors, just a frail woman with sunken eyes and paper-thin skin, clinging to whatever threads of life remained. I was on night shift again, alone in the ICU, with 2 other nurses and 5 patients. That night was unusually calm. No codes, no transfers, just the soft hum of monitors and the occasional beeping of a fluid pump. Miss Halverson was unresponsive from the start, pupils fixed, breathing shallow, barely any reflexes. We knew she wouldn't last the night. Still, we monitored her, kept her comfortable. We dimmed the lights in her room, cleaned her gently, and spoke to her, even though she never replied. Around 2:23 a.m., her vitals flatlined. No warning, no spike in heart rate or pressure, just a quiet, soft drop into silence. The heart monitor beeped once, then showed a flat line. We confirmed death at 2:24 a.m. The attending came and pronounced her. A death like that, quiet and peaceful, is almost merciful in our line of work. We covered her body, drew the curtain, called the morgue transport, who arrived a little after 3 a.m. By 3:15, the room was empty, or it should have been, because at 3:30, I walked past the room and heard beeping. I paused, soft and steady. Beep, beep, beep. I opened the door. The monitor was on, and it was reading vitals, heart rate, 61 BPM, blood pressure, 117/76, respiration 14, O2 sat 98%. I froze. I walked to the monitor and double-checked. The cables were hanging. There was no one in the bed. Still, the monitor showed a living patient. I unplugged the machine. The vitals kept going. I called Jacob, the night charge nurse. He came in, looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. Did you run a test cable? No. He frowned. Did someone maybe reassign the monitor from another bed? No, I said. This is bed 6's monitor. It hasn't moved. He stood there quietly for a moment, then said, just reset it. So I powered it off, waited, powered it back on. It booted, then immediately began reading the same vitals. Heart rate, 61 BPM. BP 117/76. Jacob scratched his head. Maybe it's a software glitch. Submit a ticket in the morning. I nodded, but my gut was screaming. That wasn't a glitch. That was her. The next night, I came in for another shift, walked past room 6. The lights were off. No one assigned to that room. Still, the monitor was on, still showing vitals. Heart rate, 62. BP, 115/75. Resp 13. I checked the machine again. No cables attached, no pressure cuff connected, no chest leads. Still, the vitals were there. I reset it again, still came back. I asked Jacob if maintenance checked it. They said nothing's wrong, he said. Maybe it's just ghost data from the last patient. I almost laughed. Ghost data. On night 3, something changed. I was charting at the desk when I heard coughing, a dry choking cough, like someone struggling to breathe. It was coming from room 6. I walked in, still empty, still dark, but it was cold, much colder than the hallway, and I swear to you, there was someone breathing in that room, soft, labored, raspy. The monitor pulsed, then I saw the pressure cuff inflate on its own. The screen updated, BP 118/76. I backed out and closed the door. I didn't tell Jacob that time. Night 4, I asked housekeeping if anyone had cleaned room 6. The woman, Carla, shook her head. Not that one, she said. Feels off, like someone's still in there. I didn't push, she wasn't wrong. That night, I peeked in again. The vitals were still there, but now they were changing. Heart rate, 59, then 62. BP 110/73. Resp 16, like someone was stabilizing, growing stronger. It made my skin crawl. Night 5, things escalated. I entered the room at midnight. The monitor was glowing faint blue in the dark, but something else was in there too. The air had a smell, like old roses, faint perfume, and mold. The scent of rot beneath sweetness. I stood by the bed, watched the screen. Then I heard her voice, soft, whistling through dry lips. "Don't turn it off." I spun around. Nothing. But my pulse was racing. I bolted from the room. "I know what I heard," she spoke. "I didn't enter the room again on night 6, but I watched the screen from the desk at 3:23 a.m. Right around the time she died, the monitor spiked. Heart rate jumped to 102. BP climbed to 140/90ths. Respiration erratic, like she was panicking. Then I saw movement, a figure in the bed, not full, not whole, just the impression of a person lying under the sheet, like someone was occupying the bed. I blinked, and it was gone. The monitor stabilized, back to 61 BPM. Like always, on night 7, I came prepared. I brought my phone, recorded the monitor, the vitals, the empty bed, everything. At 2:24 a.m., I whispered, "Miss Halverson, do you need help?" The room dropped 10 degrees, and the monitor flatlined. Beep, beep, beep. I watched it happen live, as if she had been waiting for permission to let go. The line went flat, no heart rate, no pressure, just silence, and it stayed that way. I sat in the dark for almost 20 minutes. Nothing moved, nothing beeped. The room was just a room again. At 3 a.m., I powered off the monitor. It didn't turn back on. Finally, she was gone. The next day, I showed the video to Jacob. He watched it in silence, then deleted it from my phone. "Don't show this to anyone else," he said. "This unit has seen enough." That was 6 months ago. Bed 6 works normally now. Patients come and go. The monitor functions like it should. But every year, on March 7th, at 2:24 a.m., the vitals flicker, just for a second, like a shadow breathing, still holding on, still afraid of being forgotten. And every year, I whisper the same thing. "You can rest now." And for 1 more year, she does.